Hello, everyone. Welcome to one of our Nature Works program being brought to you today by Penguin Court, which is a preserve of the Brandywine Conservancy, the Bottle Works Ethnic Arts Center in Johnstown, REI Co-op and their distribution center in Bedford, and the Community Foundation for the Alleghenies. I'm really happy today to introduce to you Mike Cook, who's really the mastermind and I think a lot of the muscle the incline plane trails that you'll see at the incline in Johnstown. And he's here to speak to you about how that process all came to be, about mountain biking, safety, and how you can get involved. So Mike, thanks so much for being with us today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me. So we'll start with a little bit of history on the trails. I was working downtown. My office is right across the street from the library, and I was looking for some sort of escape over my lunch break. And I heard that there were trails on this hillside, so I started running up the trails over my lunch break. And I noticed that there were a bunch of trees down. The trails weren't really passable in places. And at the same time, my friend Dave approached me and he said, why aren't there mountain biking trails on the incline plane hillside? And if you give me a second, I'm going to start a little slideshow here. So I'll share my screen. And let me start this. Our little Zoom icons. This is one of the hurdles when you're doing this is over the menu. I need to start the slideshow. There we go. Okay, so in November of 2017, we started just cutting the trees out of the trails so that they were a little more passable. I had wrote a proposal for the city of Johnstown and asked them if we start taking care of the hiking trails, if they would mind if we built some mountain bike trails there as well. And for some reason, the city solicitor agreed to it. And we're eternally grateful for that. And since then, we've built about 7 trails on the incline plane. These pictures are all from the very first year of trail building. We had a whole bunch of volunteers come out that first year. Some really great people. This is John George Schick, if you know him. He does a lot around town, and just people in the community that saw value in this. And we also had some service fraternities from UPJ come down and help us. We had the Eagle Scouts do a project up there that first year. So we had a lot of buy-in from the community to build a really robust trail system. And we couldn't have done it without them. There were a lot of obstacles that first year. We didn't realize it when we first got into it, but the existing trail system that was established in the 70s was in a lot worse shape than we thought. So our first goal was really to open up that. And that picture of me with the chainsaw back at the beginning was us doing that. Like I had mentioned, there were also a number of landslides there. This is a very dynamic and not very stable hillside. Somewhere around the turn of the century, every tree was cut off this hillside and was probably used for industry, be it the steel mills or home building, things along those lines. So there isn't a lot of old growth on this hillside, and the root structure of these trees is very shallow, and that doesn't hold the soil in place. When we get heavy rains, we get trees down and we get a lot of landslides. So we had to clear all of those out. The next step was cutting in the new trails, and that's what we're doing in these pictures, and all of it was done with these Rogue hoes. We didn't use any equipment at all, or power equipment rather, outside of the chainsaws. We used these to cut every inch of that trail, 8 inches at a time. And that's a lot of dirt to move. Some of the other tools in our arsenal, we have fire rakes that are used for raking fire lines. Those come in handy too. Those are the orange handled things that you see there. They cut through roots. We try not to cut through roots as much as possible because, you know, that kills trees. We're talking about real small roots. So we don't cut trees out and we don't cut through tree roots. We go around them. That's one of our main goals. So the project has been going on since, like I said, 2017. Right now, we're up to about 7 mountain bike trails that we have up there. And I'll get into the expansion of the hillside here in a little bit. But some of the things we want to do is cut a couple more mountain bike trails, and I would like to do some more hiking trails as well. One of the other projects is getting, these are the James Wolfe sculptures you're seeing now. They were put up there for the centennial of the 1889 flood. We relocated these off of the hillside. They're going to go down to PNG Gas Park so everybody could enjoy them and not have to hike up the hillside because they weren't that easy to get to. They were on a very interesting slope. So that's a little bit of the background on what we did on the hillside. Now I'm going to play some video so you can see what riding there looks like. A little bit of video of the trails. The video is not mine, but the trails are. This is a trail called Johnstown, which is the German name for Johnstown. And we tried to keep a Johnstown theme across the names of the trails. So we have Slapshot, we have Morley's, we have Lower Works, which is a reference to the steel mills. And we try to keep that. We have a couple that deviated from that just a little bit, but we try to stick with the Johnstown theme. This is the only trail system in the United States that we could find that is currently serviced by public transportation, because in case you didn't know, the Johnstown Incline Plane is owned by the Cambria County Transit Authority. So whenever you ride that, their ridership numbers go up, and as a result, the incline plane gets more money from the transportation board because they show more ridership. So we're giving back to the community a little bit as well as we're enjoying riding down the trails. When you get off the incline plane, you make a left onto Edge Hill Drive, and we're completely at the end of the street. And this is the first roll in for Johnstown, and you can see them going down the hill there. So currently we have 7 trails up there, like I had mentioned early, with plans to build more. What's up there right now is single track trails, and they are downhill trails. So if you're expecting to get out and ride a rail trail, you're not going to get that up there. And this is, as the leaves were starting to come off the trees, you could see that there's an awful lot of leaf coverage up there, but normally we go through there with leaf blower backpacks and clean all the trails off. So you just see the clean dirt. All of the trails are fairly well marked, and we have their difficulty marked on them as well. They do tend to get muddy. So if you wanted to go up there and ride after a rainstorm, be aware the traction might not be the best. And that kind of dovetails nicely into the safety aspect of using these trails. Like I said, they're downhill trails, so you really need to know what you're getting into whenever you're riding up there. You need to make sure that you have a shop grade downhill or enduro bike. You can't get a bike off of the rack at Walmart, unfortunately, and expect it to go safely down the hill. Those bikes just aren't made for that kind of riding. We also highly recommend wearing knee, elbow, and chest and back protectors. I learned firsthand. I had a pretty bad accident up there on trails that I know very well. That was a really, really bad accident, actually. And a lot of that the injury that I sustained could have been mitigated had I been wearing chest and back protection. I know, practice what you preach. I do it on my motorcycle. I should do it on a downhill mountain bike as well, but I've since bought some. You are 100% required to wear a helmet up there. If any of us that are normal trail builders see you up there without a helmet on, we're going to ask you to leave the trail system. This might not look like it's too crazy right now, but there are some spots where you're fairly close to trees. If you were to have an accident, the tree wins against the squishy head on top of your neck every single time. So you have to make sure you wear a helmet. Personally, I prefer a full face helmet only because I really don't trust myself. So the right protective gear is necessary for riding these trails. You should at least be familiar with how your bike handles on fast and loose terrain as well. And if you don't, we have a couple of easier trails. J-Line, for example, is just a series of switchbacks down the hill that you can warm up on and get a feel for. And if you get on J-Line and you don't feel comfortable, then the rest of the trail system is really outside of the scope of your skill set. So you're not going to want to ride the rest of them. There are a couple of places where he's coming up on now is a giant washout. There are some high exposure places where we're working on getting split rail fence in there. So it's a little bit safer for the folks that are riding down the hill. But, you know, be aware if you do have an accident. And I don't want to be all doom and gloom because it's really, really fun up there. But if you do have an accident, you're on a really steep hill, odds are you're going to end up going down the hill. So if you want to get up there and ride, please use a lot of caution. And you're not sure if you're ready to ride these trails, you're always welcome to reach out to me on the Friends of the Incline Plane Trails Facebook page. And I will be more than happy to meet folks up there and take them down the trails the first time. This is the ride into J-Line. You'll notice on this trail in particular that there are a lot of trees down. We built this trail over the course of the winter, the second year that the trails were around, and it's a series of switchbacks. This person is going slow down it, and that is perfectly fine. But a tornado hit this trail in the spring, and that's where all of these trees came from. And it was actually really, really awesome. A whole bunch of people from the community came together and spent a couple of days up there, and we managed to chainsaw all of the trees that this tornado knocked down off of J-Line and get it open and rideable so everybody could enjoy it. And honestly, it's one of the most fun trails up there, in my opinion. It's 9 switchbacks from the top to the bottom, and you can see it's a lot more mellow than what the other trails in the past video, or in the previous video rather, were showing. And we've got a nice safe ride out here as well for J-Line that just kind of skims along the hillside and then works its way down to the incline plane. So I had mentioned a lot of really specific gear and bike types that you need for getting into this sort of activity. Unfortunately, right now, there isn't anywhere in Johnstown that actually rents bikes out, but you can demo bikes from Hope Cyclery, and I do believe Fat Jimmy's will as well. Don't quote me on that, but I would call them ahead of time and see if they'll let you demo a bike as long as you let them know where you're riding it. But if you are going to demo a bike and you're not familiar with the bike, take it slow down them the first time. They were designed so that you can go really fast down the trails, or if you wanted to ride your brakes down them the whole way, you could do that as well, and you'll be perfectly fine. You can see here that there's a younger gentleman riding the trails, so they, you know, there's a broad spectrum of ages of people that ride them. We have kids as young as 7. Actually, we had a race last year and a kid was about 7 years old that ran in the race, or rode in the race. And then we have my friend Ed, who is in his 70s, and he rides the trails as well. So there's a little bit of something for everybody up there. I'm gonna get out of the video and I wanna talk about the plans for the incline plane hillside in the upcoming year. We're in a transition period right now. In that there's a really big construction project that's about to start on that hillside that is going to kind of make the trails harder to ride. So right now you ride down the trails, obviously, you get on the incline plane, you go back to the top, it's all hunky-dory. Well, the incline plane is going to be closed for the next 18 months. The reason for that, if we zoom in a little bit here, the incline plane itself is going under a big renovation project. So they're going to replace all of the ties on the incline. Obviously, they can't run the cars while they're replacing those ties. In addition, construction is going to begin on a Riverside Park. And if we zoom in just a little bit more, and wait for that to focus, this entire area down here along the river is covered in knotweed right now and not really usable because of that. Now, something interesting about the incline plane hillside is this is one of the only places in the city of Johnstown where there isn't river wall on one side of the hill, or one side of the river rather. So this is going to be developed in partnership with Visions 2025 at the Conemaugh Valley Conservancy into a Riverside Park. It'll have an ADA accessible ramp that gets over to the hillside. And it'll have a series of paved walkways that work their way down to the river here, and we'll have a fishing pier and a kayak launch. Currently, there's a kayak launch across the river at the bottom of the incline plane ramp, but the problem with this kayak launch or takeout is there's no parking. There's no real good way to get your boats in and out of the river. And the development of this park is really going to make this a lot more accessible for a lot more people. And I mentioned the ADA accessible ramp. Keep in mind too, these aren't just mountain biking trails. I've been talking about mountain biking because that's been the primary focus of the construction of them over the last couple of years, but they're a fantastic series of hiking trails as well. So you can hike the whole way from the bottom to the top of the incline plane. If we move along the river, or upstream rather, over here to this little road called Coconut Place, we're going to develop the end of Coconut Place. We already did the property acquisition on that, into a parking area. And it will taper down. It'll have a nice graded trail to the park. So you could park at the end of Coconut Place and walk down to the river as well. This is also going to tie into the urban connectivity project that is working on getting trails put through the city. It will be part of the 9/11 Memorial Trail System as well, which obviously connects Shanksville to New York City to Washington, D.C. and back. On top of that, where are we at here? There we go. Our trails cover this wooded area here. Now, this chunk of property that I am circling with my mouse cursor that runs down along Mill Creek Road, it's all these trees here, was part of the old Flower Barn property. Recently, that's been subdivided off of the Flower Barn property, and we have flagged trails there as well. The goal of the trail that we're building over there is going to be nice and wide. It'll be an uphill and a downhill trail. So if you're one of those sickos that likes to pedal bicycles uphills, you can do that over there. We're going to try to keep the whole thing about 12 feet wide so that it's got enough room for everybody to enjoy. It'll work its way down here along the bottom of these houses, and then it'll tie in with all of these trails down here as well. So those are our future plans for the hillside. The goal is to have this whole thing covered in trails. And then there's another trail that runs out here along where Washington Street is, and it cuts up and around into Brownstown. And we're working with the folks in Stackhouse Park to tie those two trail systems together and work on signage and maps so you can ride the incline plane trails down, work your way up into Brownstown, and then take a nice ride around Stackhouse Park as well. So those are our future plans. And I'm sure more will pop up as we move along and find more cool places to dig on this hillside. Unfortunately, this past year, our events all got canceled, well, except for one. We had planned a number of races. We were going to do a series. We, like I said, had to cancel all of those except for our Halloween race, which we had 50 people come out and race. And that's not an insignificant number of people racing. So for this coming year, I'm going to stop the share now. For this coming year, we would like to have another race series as long as we can do it safely. We had to space out for the last one. It's always kind of hard when you're stuck on the corner of Edge Hill Drive and Tioga Street to space 50 people out, but we managed and we did okay, and we use that as a fundraiser. So hopefully in the future, we can do a couple more downhill races as a fundraiser. If you're interested in getting involved, follow the Friends of the Incline Plane Trails Facebook page. That is me. I'm the admin of that page. If you want to get out and dig in the dirt with us, we go out every Saturday from 9 until about 11 and every Sunday from 9 to 11. Rain or shine, we don't care what the temperature is. If it's minus 13, we're still out there digging. And it's fun. If it gets too cold, we'll leave. And if you just want to make a financial donation, you could do so through the Community Foundation for the Alleghenies. I host all of my funds there, so I don't personally touch any of the money. I don't want to. I route everything through the Community Foundation, and that's where we get our tools from. So, yeah, that's it.
Well, thank you so much, Mike. This was really informative and so much fun to know. People don't have to go to Colorado or Moab in Utah for some really incredible mountain bike opportunities.
That's right. We have it right here in Johnstown. Anybody noticed it, but there are a lot more mountains around here than just that one. So there's potential for trails all over the place in Johnstown.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for that excellent summary. Everyone who has joined us today or in the future watches this video, I hope you're inspired to check out mountain biking and maybe lend a hand to help develop some more trails in the area. So thank you so much for your time today, and we'll see you at our next NatureWorks.
Sounds good.